Ethan adjusted the straps of his pack as he stepped off the landing shuttle onto the alien world. The air was thinner than Earth's, but breathable, carrying a faint metallic scent that tingled his nostrils. He scanned the horizon. Jagged mountains pierced the sky and the soil glimmered faintly under the twin suns. This planet, Zephyria, had long been rumored to host intelligent life, but the details were scarce. Ethan's mission was simple: explore, observe, and report. Yet as he walked along the smooth, glassy plains, he felt the familiar thrill of stepping into the unknown. He had trained for this. Years of simulations, survival exercises, and alien language study had prepared him. But nothing could have prepared him for the feeling of walking across a planet that seemed almost alive, the ground humming faintly under his boots. He paused and took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. Ahead, a faint shimmer caught his eye. At first he thought it was a mirage, but as he approached, the shimmer solidified into a structure unlike anything he had seen. It was tall and elegant, rising like a crystal spire from the plains. Its surface reflected the twin suns in patterns that danced like liquid light. Ethan's heart skipped. This had to be the palace, the central structure where the rumored alien leaders resided. He took cautious steps closer, the metallic scent growing stronger. The palace doors were enormous, carved from what looked like a single piece of translucent crystal. They opened silently as he approached, revealing a vast hall filled with soft, glowing light. The walls shimmered with patterns that seemed to shift as he walked, and the floor was smooth, almost like glass, but warm under his boots. From the far end of the hall, a figure appeared. Ethan froze, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. The alien was humanoid but taller than most humans, slender and graceful, with skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Her eyes were large and deep, colored like liquid silver, reflecting the light like mirrors. She wore flowing garments that shifted color as she moved, blending seamlessly with the shimmering patterns on the walls. "You are human," the alien said, her voice soft but commanding. Ethan was surprised by the melodic quality and the slight curiosity in her tone. "I have read about your kind, but I did not expect one to appear before me." I am part of an exploration team," Ethan replied carefully. "I mean no harm. I was scouting when I found this place." His voice sounded small in the vast hall. The alien tilted her head slightly, studying him. "I am Princess Lyra. I govern this world along with my council. It is unusual for outsiders to arrive unannounced." Ethan swallowed. He had expected first contact scenarios, negotiations, perhaps even hostility, but this was something else entirely. Lyra did not seem threatening. Her curiosity was clear, her eyes studying him as if she wanted to see beyond his physical form. I did not mean to intrude," Ethan said, keeping his hands visible. "I can leave if you prefer." Lyra shook her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "No, you may stay. Humans are fascinating." She paused, then added softly, "Tell me, do humans dream?" Ethan blinked, surprised by the sudden question. "Dream like sleep dreams?" he asked, unsure if she understood. "Yes," Lyra said, her voice carrying a hint of hesitation. "What happens in them? Do you see the future? Or do you live the impossible?" Her silver eyes were focused on him, waiting, curious. Ethan thought for a moment. Dreams were deeply personal, something he rarely shared with anyone. But there was something in her gaze, something gentle and unassuming, that made him feel safe. "Dreams, they are like stories our minds create while we sleep. Sometimes they are memories, sometimes fears, sometimes things we wish could happen. They are private, I guess, but they say a lot about what we feel inside." Lyra's expression changed subtly. Her cheeks, though faintly shimmering, seemed to take on a soft glow, almost like a blush. "You mean dreams are more than just images?" she asked quietly. "They carry feelings." "Yes," Ethan said. "They carry everything: hope, fear, desire, curiosity. They show what we cannot always say while awake." He noticed her looking down, as if considering something deeply. Lyra's voice was quieter when she spoke next. And do humans ever dream of things they cannot have? Things that are forbidden? Ethan looked at her closely. There was a vulnerability in her question, a softness he had not expected from someone with such a commanding presence. He nodded slowly. Yes, often. Dreams are where we explore what we cannot touch, what we cannot live. They are safe places even if they are painful sometimes. Lyra's eyes returned to his, and for a moment she seemed hesitant. I have always wondered what it is like to live without boundaries, to choose life for oneself, not because tradition demands it. Her words were almost a whisper. Ethan could see a faint flush across her cheeks, a sign of emotion she was unused to expressing. That sounds like a beautiful dream, Ethan said gently. And maybe one day you can make it real. Dreams often inspire action, even in ways people don't expect. She regarded him silently, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. Perhaps, but dreams are delicate. They are private. Sometimes sharing them makes them fragile. Ethan realized she was inviting him into a space few ever entered, the personal realm of her inner thoughts. He felt the weight of the moment, understanding that she was not asking casually. I will not break them, he said softly. If you want to share, I will listen. Lyra blinked, and her lips curved into a small, uncertain smile. Perhaps, in time, I may. For now, tell me about your dreams, human. What do you hope for? Ethan felt a flicker of warmth in his chest. Most humans would not dare ask an alien for such personal thoughts, but here was someone not just curious, but genuinely listening. He took a breath and began to describe his dreams, not the grand ones of glory or conquest, but the simple ones. Walking through an untouched forest, seeing stars from a world without light pollution, meeting new species and learning from them. He spoke of hope for understanding, for connection across worlds, and the desire to leave the universe a little better than he found it. Lyra listened, her expression softening with each word. Her eyes reflected the light of the hall, shimmering as though absorbing not just his words but his feelings. For the first time, she seemed completely human in her curiosity and vulnerability, despite her alien form. When he finished, there was a pause. Lyra's voice was almost shy. Your dreams, they are simple yet profound. They speak of respect and care. They make me wonder if such things are possible for me. She looked down, hiding the faint flush that spread across her cheeks. Ethan noticed it, a subtle hint of emotion she could not entirely conceal. You can have them, he said carefully. Dreams are the first step, and sometimes someone else believing in them helps make them real. She glanced at him, and he saw a flicker of something like hope, mingled with uncertainty. Perhaps you are different from the humans I have read about. Curious, brave, and compassionate. Her words were soft, almost hesitant, yet they carried a weight that made Ethan's heart beat faster. The conversation left them both silent for a moment. Outside, the twin suns dipped lower, casting long shadows across the palace floor. Ethan realized how unusual this encounter was. Not only had he made first contact with an alien civilization, but he had also begun a connection unlike any other. A connection that went beyond politics, science, or diplomacy, something rooted in understanding, curiosity, and shared humanity. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice quieter than before. You will stay for a while, won't you? I wish to understand more. Ethan nodded. I will. If you allow it. A small smile curved her lips, genuine and unguarded. Then we have much to discuss, human, about dreams and perhaps about life itself. As Ethan settled into the palace, he could not shake the feeling that this world and this princess were unlike anything he had ever known. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that dreams, both his and hers, were not just something to imagine in sleep, but a reality waiting to be explored. Over the next few days, Ethan moved through the palace like a careful observer, learning its rhythms and patterns. The hallways were long, lined with shimmering panels that seemed alive, shifting color as he passed. The air always smelled faintly of ozone and soft flowers, a strange combination that was both calming and energizing. Everywhere he looked, there was beauty unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Princess Lyra had asked him to stay, and he respected the invitation. Though she ruled with quiet authority, she also showed curiosity and warmth. Each morning, they would meet in a small room at the top of the palace, where sunlight fell through a crystalline window. There, she asked about humans, their culture, and the strange and wonderful things Ethan had seen in his travels. It was during one of these mornings that the conversation turned back to dreams. Lyra sat cross-legged on a floating platform that glimmered faintly beneath her, her silver eyes focused on him with unusual intensity. "Humans dream of what they cannot have," she said softly, her voice carrying a faint note of wonder. "I think I understand that better now, but what about you? Do you ever dream of impossible things?" Ethan leaned back against the wall, thinking carefully. "All the time. Dreams aren't always about reality. Sometimes they are about things we wish could exist or about people we wish we could meet. They're a way to explore possibilities without fear." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "A way to explore without fear, that is rare here. On Zephyria, we are bound by rules. Tradition is heavy and expectations never end. We must act as our society demands, not as our hearts desire. Dreams, they are dangerous." Ethan frowned slightly. "Dangerous. They can inspire actions that society does not allow," Lyra said. "They can reveal desires that others would never accept, and yet they are the most honest part of a person." She paused and looked away, her cheeks glowing faintly. Ethan noticed the subtle blush but said nothing. He simply waited, sensing she would continue when ready. Finally she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I sometimes dream of leaving this palace, leaving Zephyria and exploring the stars like you do, free from expectations. Free to live as myself." Her words trembled slightly, and Ethan realized the magnitude of her confession. "That sounds amazing," he said softly. "It takes courage to even imagine that, and even more courage to say it out loud." Lyra's gaze met his, hesitant yet searching. "Do humans ever act on dreams like that, even if it is risky?" "Sometimes," Ethan said. "Sometimes the risk is worth it, and sometimes it changes everything. You just have to know what you value and who you trust." He hesitated before adding, "And sometimes you find someone willing to face the risk with you." Lyra looked down, her fingers resting lightly on her knees. Her cheeks flushed deeper this time, and she made no effort to hide it. There was a vulnerability in her that Ethan had not expected, a side of a ruler rarely seen. "I have no one here I can trust like that," she admitted. "Even my council, even my closest advisors, they cannot understand dreams. They cannot understand feelings." Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. He wanted to tell her that he understood, that he could be the one she trusted, but he remained quiet, letting her speak. "I have watched the stars every night from this palace," she continued, her voice soft but filled with longing. "I know there are worlds beyond this one. I know there are things to see, things to experience, and yet I cannot leave. Not yet, perhaps, one day." Ethan nodded, not taking his eyes off her. "One day you will, and when that day comes you will see everything you've dreamed of. I believe that." Lyra's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, and the flush on her cheeks deepened. For a moment she simply sat there, lost in thought. Then, as if deciding something, she stood and walked to a corner of the room. She lifted a small device, placing it on the platform between them. It emitted a faint glow. "This is a dream recorder," she said quietly. "It can show fragments of what I have dreamed. Not all, but pieces. I thought perhaps you would like to see." Ethan's eyes widened. He had read about dream devices in scientific journals but never seen one in use. I would be honored," he said. Lyra activated the device. A soft holographic display unfolded, showing shifting images of alien landscapes, strange skies, and people he had never seen. But there were also images of Lyra herself, walking alone through empty corridors, floating in zero gravity, and gazing at stars she could never reach. Her expression in the holograms mirrored the longing in her voice. Ethan watched in silence, feeling a mix of awe and empathy. These were not just dreams, they were a window into her heart. "These are incredible," he said softly. "They show more than just images. They show what you hope for, what you fear, and who you are." Lyra turned her eyes toward him, silver meeting human brown. Her cheeks were flushed again and she seemed shy, though her posture remained regal. "Do you understand me?" she asked, almost hesitantly. "I think I do," Ethan replied. "And I want to. I want to understand more than anyone else ever has." For the next few days, their meetings continued, each one peeling back layers of both curiosity and trust. Ethan shared stories of Earth, his childhood, and his dreams for exploration. Lyra revealed details about Zephyrian society, the pressures of royal life, and the loneliness that came with power. Each conversation deepened their connection, a quiet friendship forming despite the differences between human and alien. One afternoon, as twin suns began to set, Lyra asked him to join her on a balcony overlooking the crystal plains. The view was breathtaking. Light from the suns reflected off the mountains, painting the landscape in gold and violet. Ethan felt a strange peace, the kind that comes only when the world seems vast and possibilities endless. "Ethan," Lyra said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon, "do humans ever feel trapped by their dreams, by the things they want but cannot have?" "All the time," he admitted. "But that's what makes us try harder to reach for what seems impossible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the act of trying, that is what defines us." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then perhaps dreams are not only private, perhaps they are meant to guide us, even when no one else can see them." Ethan looked at her, noticing the way her cheeks flushed again, the vulnerability that shone through the regal facade. "I think you're right, and perhaps sharing them with someone you trust makes them even stronger." Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment the air seemed to shift. There was an unspoken understanding, a bond forming that transcended species, culture, and expectation. In that silence, Ethan realized that he was no longer just a visitor on Zephyria. He was part of something larger, something alive in its potential. The conversation turned lighter after that. They laughed at small misunderstandings, compared Earth and Zephyria in silly ways, and Ethan even attempted to teach her a human game involving cards and chance. Lyra's laughter was musical, echoing softly across the balcony, and Ethan felt a joy he had not known in years. As night fell, the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the crystal plains. Lyra's gaze lingered on the moons, and Ethan sensed she was imagining a life where she could roam freely under their glow. He did not speak, allowing her the space to dream aloud. Finally she turned to him, her cheeks still flushed but her eyes shining. "Thank you, Ethan, for listening, for understanding. It is rare for anyone to see me this way." "You are not alone here," Ethan said gently. "Not while I am here. And perhaps, one day, your dreams will not just be dreams." Lyra nodded, and for the first time she seemed completely at ease. There was a quiet trust between them now, a bond forged not through duty or expectation, but through curiosity, shared stories, and the courage to show one's heart. As Ethan returned to his quarters that night, he thought about how much he had learned in just a few days. Lyra was more than a princess, more than a ruler. She was a being capable of dreams, hope, and vulnerability, and he knew, deep down, that their journey together was only beginning. The palace of Zephyria was a place of beauty and wonder, but it was not without danger. Beneath its shimmering walls, factions within the court whispered against the princess. Not everyone approved of Lyra's curiosity about humans, and some feared that outsiders might bring trouble. Ethan had not known this, but it would soon become clear that their peaceful days were fragile. It began with subtle signs. Guards, normally attentive but polite, seemed more watchful. Some palace attendants avoided certain corridors, their glances uneasy. Lyra herself grew quiet, her silver eyes clouded with concern. Ethan noticed her fidgeting with a pendant, a small crystal that seemed to resonate with her heartbeat. "What is it?" he asked gently. Something feels wrong," she admitted. "There are those here who do not like what I am doing, who do not trust humans. I cannot see clearly what they plan, but I sense danger." Ethan nodded. He had faced threats before, but not like this. This was subtle, political, and potentially deadly. "Then we need to be careful, and we need a plan." Lyra considered him, her gaze steady. "I trust you, Ethan. Perhaps you can help me navigate this." Their first step was observation. They moved quietly through the palace halls, listening and watching for any unusual movements. Ethan was struck by how intricate everything was. The palace seemed alive, almost aware of the tensions growing within it. Guards stationed at odd intervals, corridors that shifted slightly as if to confuse intruders, and subtle signs that only someone paying close attention could notice. As they explored, Lyra shared her knowledge of the palace's hidden pathways. "These corridors are older than most of the palace," she explained. "They were built for emergencies, escape routes, and for secrets. Only a few know of them." Ethan's curiosity piqued, but he kept his focus. "Then we'll use them if needed. And if anyone approaches us, we are ready." The opportunity came sooner than they expected. During one evening, as the twin moons bathed the palace in silver light, a warning bell rang. It was a soft, almost silent signal, known only to the royal family and their closest allies. Lyra's eyes widened. "They are here," she whispered. Ethan followed her as she led him through a maze of hidden corridors. Their footsteps were silent against the smooth floors, the walls shimmering faintly to mask their presence. Ethan was impressed by Lyra's calmness, despite the danger. She moved with purpose, yet there was a hint of fear beneath her composed exterior. They emerged in a small observation room high above the palace grounds. Through a crystal window, Ethan could see shadows moving, figures dressed in dark cloaks approaching the palace gates. They were fast, organized, and clearly armed. "Rogue faction," Lyra said, her voice tight. "They want to capture me, to prevent what I am trying to do. I do not know if they will stop at nothing." Ethan felt a surge of protectiveness. "Then we won't let them. We need to stay ahead of them and if needed, fight." Lyra nodded. "Follow me. There is a way to reach the outer defenses without being seen, but it will be risky." They moved quickly, navigating corridors that shifted and twisted in unfamiliar ways. Ethan marveled at Lyra's knowledge of the palace. She anticipated every turn, every trap, and every hidden sensor. Yet even with her guidance, the tension was palpable. Shadows moved beneath the walls, and faint whispers echoed as if carried by the architecture itself. Finally, they reached a hidden exit. It opened to a narrow passageway leading toward the palace's outer terraces. The wind here was stronger, carrying the scent of metal and ozone. Ethan could see the rogue faction advancing, their forms silhouetted against the faint glow of the twin moons. Lyra's hand brushed against a control panel. A faint hum filled the air and sections of the terrace shifted, creating obstacles for their pursuers. Ethan realized that the princess had been preparing for contingencies like this all along. "Impressive," he said quietly. Lyra's eyes flicked toward him, silver meeting brown. "Do not underestimate them. They are desperate and dangerous, but we must survive." The first wave of attackers reached the terrace. Ethan and Lyra moved with precision, ducking behind walls and using the shifting terrain to their advantage. Ethan found himself relying not just on his training, but on Lyra's insight. She anticipated the attacker's moves, guiding him in ways that seemed almost instinctive. At one point, an attacker lunged from above, and Ethan reacted instinctively, catching him before he could strike Lyra. She glanced at him, her cheeks flushed not from fear but from gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," Ethan replied, keeping his focus on the remaining threats. The chase continued across terraces and corridors, their path illuminated by moonlight and the palace's shimmering walls. Ethan marveled at how Lyra's dreams, the ones she had shared with him, seemed to shape her thinking. Every turn, every decision, reflected the freedom and curiosity she had described. Dreams, he realized, were not just private thoughts for her. They were a guide, a source of strategy and insight. At a critical moment, they reached a collapsed bridge that separated them from the main palace grounds. The attackers were closing in, and there seemed to be no way forward. Lyra stepped forward, placing her hands on the edge of the bridge. A faint glow spread from her palms, and the bridge shifted slightly, stabilizing enough for them to cross. Ethan's jaw dropped. "You can do that?" he asked, amazed. Lyra nodded, her cheeks flushing again. "A little. My dreams, they help me see possibilities others cannot, but it is draining. I cannot do it often." Ethan moved beside her, careful and steady. "Then let's make it count." They crossed the bridge, reaching the safety of the palace's inner gardens. The rogue faction had paused, wary of the unknown pathways and shifting terrain. Ethan realized that Lyra's knowledge, combined with his human ingenuity, had given them an advantage. For a moment they stood in the garden, catching their breath. The twin moons reflected off the crystalline flowers, creating a soft, ethereal glow. Lyra's expression was a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We survived, but they will not give up," she said quietly. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Then we will be ready next time, together." Her eyes met his, silver shining in the moonlight. There was trust there, deep and unspoken, stronger than any words could convey. "Together," she repeated, her voice soft but certain. As the night deepened, they walked through the garden, their steps careful but deliberate. Ethan noticed the way Lyra observed the stars, her eyes reflecting longing and wonder. "Do you ever dream of leaving this world?" he asked gently. She smiled faintly, cheeks flushed, and nodded. "Every night. I see places I cannot reach, skies I cannot touch, but having someone to share them with makes the dreams feel closer to reality." Ethan realized that this was more than just survival. It was a connection that went beyond species, culture, or expectation. Dreams, fears, hopes, they had shared them, and in doing so, they had built a bond that neither danger nor distance could easily break. The rest of the night was spent planning. They mapped out potential escape routes, discussed defensive strategies, and explored ways to use the palace's shifting architecture to their advantage. Ethan was impressed by Lyra's intelligence and bravery. Despite her royal upbringing, she was willing to face danger, to take risks, and to rely on someone outside her species. By the time the first light of the twin suns touched the crystalline gardens, Ethan and Lyra were exhausted but resolute. The rogue faction remained a threat, but they had survived their first encounter. More importantly, they had learned to trust each other implicitly. Ethan realized that this experience had changed him. Lyra was no longer just a princess or a curiosity. She was someone he respected deeply, someone whose dreams and courage inspired him. And Lyra, for her part, had found in Ethan a human who saw beyond her title, beyond her duties, and into the heart of her hopes and fears. As they stood together, watching the suns rise, Ethan felt a quiet determination. They had faced danger, relied on each other, and survived. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together, guided not just by strategy or skill, but by trust, courage, and the shared power of dreams. Lyra's hand brushed lightly against his, a subtle gesture, and Ethan felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the suns above. "We will need each other," she said softly. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and we will." The palace seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath. Outside, the twin suns rose higher, casting light on a world full of possibilities. Ethan knew that the dangers were far from over, but for the first time, he felt that he and Lyra could face anything, together. The morning after the confrontation, the palace seemed quieter than usual. Sunlight spilled across the crystalline corridors, illuminating every surface with gold and violet light. Yet beneath the beauty, tension lingered. Ethan knew the rogue faction had not given up. Their presence was a shadow over the palace and over the princess. Lyra moved with quiet purpose through the halls, her usual calm demeanor in place, though Ethan could see the faint tension in her shoulders. He followed her, careful not to distract or alarm her. Their trust had grown over days of shared stories, dreams, and danger, but now it faced a new test. "I do not know if they will return tonight," Lyra admitted softly as they walked through a sunlit corridor, "or if they will try something bolder, but we must be ready." Ethan nodded. "We will be ready. We've faced them once, we know how they think, and we have each other." Lyra's silver eyes met his, her cheeks faintly flushed. "You are brave, human, more than most I have seen. You do not fear the unknown. You protect, even when it is dangerous." Ethan felt warmth in his chest. "I'm just doing what I can, and I'm not alone. You are brave too. You face them without hesitation. You're stronger than you realize." For a while, they moved through the palace in silence, letting the sunlight warm them. Ethan noticed the way Lyra paused to touch a crystal panel or examine a small flower in the palace garden. Even in the midst of danger, she found beauty and curiosity. That quality, he realized, was what made her dreams so vivid, so alive. Later, Lyra invited him to the observatory. The twin moons were setting, and the rising suns cast long shadows across the crystalline walls. Ethan watched her move among the instruments, her hands brushing controls with ease and precision. She was more than a princess. She was a thinker, a strategist, a dreamer. "I have been thinking," she said quietly, "about what you said about trust, about dreams guiding us. Perhaps it is time to act, to face the faction and not just defend." Ethan's brow furrowed. "You want to confront them?" "Yes," Lyra said firmly. "We cannot live in fear, and I cannot let my people, my world, be ruled by those who cannot see beyond themselves. Dreams, hope, courage, these are not weaknesses, they are strength, and I have learned that from you." Ethan felt a swell of admiration. Lyra's words were not just about strategy, they were about vision, about hope, about shaping the world in accordance with one's principles. "Then we face them together," he said. The plan was careful. They would use the palace's shifting corridors, the hidden paths, and Lyra's knowledge of the attacker's weaknesses to draw them out. Ethan would support her, covering angles she could not see and ensuring she remained safe. It was risky, but the stakes demanded courage. As night fell, they moved into position. The corridors were quiet, shimmering softly in the moonlight. Ethan could hear the faint echoes of the rogue faction approaching, their movements precise and deliberate. Lyra's hand brushed against his briefly, a silent gesture of reassurance. He squeezed her hand gently and they pressed forward. The first encounter was swift. Shadows darted through the corridors, and Ethan moved instinctively, using his training to intercept attackers and block their advances. Lyra followed, her movements fluid, guided by instinct and insight. At one point, an attacker lunged at Ethan, and he deflected the strike just as Lyra released a controlled pulse of energy from her pendant, stunning several others. Ethan watched in awe. The princess's abilities, her knowledge, and her courage combined in ways that were remarkable. She was not just defending herself. She was leading, guiding, and protecting the palace in a way that only someone with vision could. The battle continued through corridors and terraces, the palace itself almost participating in their defense. Panels shifted to create obstacles, hidden pathways provided escape routes, and crystal structures reflected light in dazzling patterns, disorienting their pursuers. Ethan realized that Lyra's dreams, the very ones she had shared with him, shaped her thinking. They gave her strategies no one else could predict. Finally, they reached the heart of the palace, a large hall with high ceilings and glowing walls. The rogue faction had cornered them, but Ethan and Lyra stood together, calm and resolute. "Your attempts end here," one of the attackers said, stepping forward. Lyra's eyes shimmered with determination. "No, your fear cannot dictate my life. My people will not live in fear. And you will not stop what is right." Ethan stepped beside her, ready. "We face this together, and we will succeed." The final confrontation was swift but decisive. Using a combination of human ingenuity and Lyra's abilities, they disarmed and incapacitated the attackers without unnecessary harm. Ethan marveled at Lyra's control. She never let anger guide her, only precision and purpose. When the last attacker was secured, Lyra leaned against a wall, breathing deeply. Her cheeks were flushed, not from exertion but from relief and adrenaline. Ethan approached and offered a hand. She took it, her silver eyes meeting his. "We did it," she said softly. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and we will continue to do it, together." The palace settled into quiet once more. Guards patrolled the corridors with renewed vigilance, and the threat of the rogue faction diminished. Yet Ethan knew the experience had changed them both. They had faced danger, relied on each other, and emerged stronger. In the observatory later that night, Lyra gazed at the twin moons reflecting off the crystal floors. Ethan joined her, standing silently beside her. She spoke first, her voice soft but certain. "Thank you, Ethan, for staying, for trusting me, for everything," Ethan smiled. "I could not have done any of it without you. You taught me as much as I taught you. Your courage, your dreams, they inspired me." Lyra's cheeks flushed again, a gentle warmth spreading across her face. "Dreams are not just for sleep, they are for life, and I am beginning to understand that fully because of you." Ethan felt a quiet joy. Their journey had begun with curiosity and conversation, but it had grown into trust, respect, and an unspoken bond. In sharing dreams, hopes, and fears, they had built something extraordinary, something neither human nor alien had experienced before. They spoke for hours, not just of dreams but of the future. Lyra shared her vision for Zephyria, a world open to understanding, exploration, and hope. Ethan spoke of humanity's potential for connection, for peace, and for courage. Together, they imagined a future where differences were celebrated, and trust bridged the vast gaps between worlds. As dawn approached, Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the first light of the suns. "Do you think humans and Zephyrians could ever truly understand each other?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "I believe we already do, and this is only the beginning." Lyra's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. Her cheeks flushed again, but it was different now, soft, joyful, full of hope. "Then let us see where our dreams take us, Ethan, together." He took her hand, holding it firmly but gently. "Together," he echoed. Outside, the palace sparkled under the rising suns. The danger was gone for now, but the future held endless possibilities. Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, united not by duty or expectation or even circumstance, but by trust, courage, and the shared power of dreams. For the first time in both their lives, they felt completely free, not just to survive but to explore, to hope, and to imagine. And as the light spread across the crystalline spires of the palace, it seemed to shine not just on Zephyria, but on the endless possibilities of what could be achieved when courage and trust guide the way. In that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Dreams were more than visions in sleep. They were the seeds of change, the sparks of courage, and the bridges between worlds. And with Lyra by his side, there was nothing they could not face, nothing they could not achieve, and no dream too distant to reach. Lyra turned to him one last time, her silver eyes bright and cheeks warm. "Let us not fear the unknown. Let us live it together." Ethan smiled, squeezing her hand. "Always." The twin suns rose fully, bathing Zephyria in gold and violet light. Two worlds, two beings united in trust, courage, and dreams, ready to step into a future of endless possibilities. And for the first time, Ethan felt that he was exactly where he was meant to be, at the side of the alien princess who had asked about dreams and had shown him that sharing them could change everything.